If you want to win your fantasy league this year, one way to get ahead in a major way is by hitting on some breakout rookie receivers. But not some of the obvious names that everybody will be drafting in the top 10 rounds like a Travis Hunter. Today we are diving into the rookies that you should be drafting, and they should only be rising up as the summer goes on, and I would guarantee that your league mates probably don't know some of these dudes. And we'll start with a guy in Kyle Williams who was drafted in the 3rd round by the New England Patriots, and overall Kyle Williams comes into the year and I believe that he should be a starter, top 2 receiver on his team right away. He comes from Washington State, and last year he had a quietly strong season. You look at the production right here over on Player Profiler, you can see every year he's earning targets. His target share 20 plus basically every single year on average, and in his final year he's putting up 1,200 yards, 70 catches, breaks the 100 target mark. It was a solid year overall. He's averaging over 17 yards per catch. That's a lot. It's well above average if you're not familiar, and that's because he's an outside receiver who wins downfield. I mean, last year he was 7th in the nation in receiving yards and 4th in touchdowns. I think the Patriots got a steal in the 3rd round. And sure, he went to Washington State, so it's not the SEC or some of the Big Ten top competition, but even against the top teams that he faced, this was against Syracuse, a number 21 ranked team in a bowl game to end the year when Washington State wasn't even ranked. 10 catches, 172 yards. He just puts his stamp on his college career. Earlier in the year against Boise State, right, they had Ashton Genty. They were a top 25 team at this point. You get 9 catches, 142 yards, a touchdown, averaging 16 yards per reception, continued every single week to be a downfield weapon, and also, we'll get into it in a second, produced after the catch in an elite way. I mean, let's look at that metric right here. You can see this is a tweet that I ended up seeing over on Twitter by Dynasty Dorks. You can see over here the specific stat I wanted to talk about was that yards after the catch. 8.4 yards after the catch per reception was first in all of college football. In all of college football. That takes into account Ted McMillan, a top 10 draft pick this year to the Carolina Panthers. Takes into account Travis Hunter, arguably the best player and wide receiver in college football last year. I mean, he was fantastic, especially against man coverage. So much so that he averaged 25.3 yards per reception against man coverage. Let me say that again. 25.3 yards per catch. To sell you on Kyle Williams even more, this is Matt Harmon of Reception Perception. We also worked together on some stuff last year at Yahoo. He does great work. His site, Reception Perception, basically this is what he does. He's like the expert for wide receivers. A 73% success rate against press coverage for Kyle Williams. That's 82nd percentile. Now I know all this is like math and big dorky speak. I mean, 82nd percentile, it's top 20% of all time, right? It's very good. At least all time in terms of Matt's database, and he basically describes him as an elite short route success rates, which is good for a guy who also wins downfield, and he's elite in these short areas as well. And he went down on first contact just 44% of the time in space, and that kind of makes sense. We mentioned how good he was yards per reception after the catch. He's also breaking some tackles to do that. He's kind of the complete package on the outside. The Patriots got him in the 3rd round. He goes to the combine. He runs a 4.40 time. It just kind of shows you that he is winning on the outside. All of this, the speed, the ability to break tackles after the catch, it's all kind of coming together. And when you look at what the Patriots did this offseason, they bring in Stefon Diggs, who right now is looking like the number 1 receiver on this team. Although I don't think Kyle Williams, the only guy you can see right here on the team changes page, a part of the blueprint. You can check out the blueprint. It'll be linked down below. Just as a little bit of a disclaimer, the blueprint is what we use to prepare for Dynasty, for season-long leagues, for not only your draft, but every single week during the season, and the prices will increase come June 1st. But if we look at what they did here, they only added Kyle Williams in the draft, and then when you look at just at wide receiver, sure, Stefon Diggs, wide receiver 1, then it was only Matt Collins. So like the overall competition for Kyle Williams right now is going to be Stefon Diggs, sure, in the slot, I think he'll play. I think Matt Collins probably starts on the outside. He could block, do some dirty work, but then I think Demario Douglas, Kyle Williams is starting over him. You look at some of the other rookie receivers this team drafted last year, and Jalen Polk and Javon Baker, neither of them really stood out last year. Doesn't mean that in their 2nd year, as they have another whole full offseason in the NFL system, that they can't develop, but I think Kyle Williams is better than both those guys right now. So you're looking at a top 2 wide receiver on a team who's going way late in best ball drafts. He's going somewhat late in dynasty leagues right now, and definitely in season long, somebody who should be on your radar. Now this next guy is Torrey Horton. He's out of Colorado State, and he was drafted in the 5th round to the Seattle Seahawks. And honestly, the only reason why he falls in the draft, in my opinion, I think he was a 3rd or a 4th round receiver, kind of in that Kyle Williams range, is because Horton was dealing with a knee injury in the pre-draft process. If we look at what he did in college, you can see right here in his final year, just 5 games, only 353 yards because of that knee injury. The 2 seasons before that, over 1,100 yards. Over 1,100 yards. The thing that I want to point out is this right here, the target share column on Player Profiler. Let's look at these target shares. 35% is elite. It's top 1% in college football. 27% is great. It's above average. Anything like say in the 24% range is good. Above that's great. He did that back-to-back years before his injury. Target share, if you're not familiar, it's the percentage of your team's targets that you earn. It shows your ability to earn targets, which translates a lot to the NFL. And you could see the game logs here for him. He was starting to come on towards the end of the year. You could see this 9-catch game for 158 yards right here on ESPN, then 7 catches for 75 yards. This is where he ends up injuring his knee, unfortunately. But then 5 months later, he returned at the NFL Combine and he ran a 4.41 40 time at less than 100%, which just kind of shows his motivation and ability to get up for something and train and get back healthy enough to still post an elite 40 time, or a really good, we should say, 40 time. Now, some more stats for Matt Harmon's reception perception. This was posted by David, a Guru Fantasy World on Twitter. You can check out his stuff, but right here you can see he calls him a baller, a motherfucking baller. 71st percentile versus man, that's great. 62nd percentile versus zone, okay, that's fine. The big one here, 94th percentile against press coverage. What does that mean? It means that about all the guys Matt Harmon and reception perception charted, and they chart a lot of guys, he's top 6% in their database at beating press coverage, which is something you definitely need to do to be an outside NFL receiver. I mean, heck, there's even a lot of wide receivers in the NFL that can't beat press coverage at that type of rate, and they didn't in college. So we now know that he's going to be on the Seattle Seahawks, and you can see the Seahawks team just on offense alone. I mean, they changed a lot on offense, right? Just in the NFL draft. Obviously, we knew they trade away DK Metcalf. They lose their quarterback, Geno Smith. Look at all these draft picks. These are just their offensive draft picks. You can see Horton's here in the 5th round. He's the only receiver they take until the 7th round with Ricky White. But what they did this offseason in free agency, according to the team changes tracker over in our blueprint, they ended up bringing in Cooper Kupp. They bring in MVS. That's kind of the replacement for Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf. I would say, in my opinion, that they kind of 1-for-1 / maybe slightly downgraded when you're talking about going from a Lockett to an MVS in some ways, just being on the field snaps wise. But in terms of Torrey Horton, like right now, yes, JSN is the number 1 receiver on this team. Kupp is a solid number 2. You can call him a 1A, 1B if you really want to. Okay, that's fine. The only competition right now, though, for Torrey Horton is MVS, who we know what he is at this point, a downfield field stretcher, and Jake Bobo, who really hasn't done all that much outside of being a bigger body in the red zone, doesn't really have the speed or burst that a Torrey Horton does. So it's really just MVS. I think if Horton is healthy year 1, he could see significant snaps almost right away. And for what it's worth, the Seahawks did bolster their offensive line. They took Gray Zabel in the 1st round, a guard. They ended up getting a couple other pieces later on in the draft, but then in free agency, they get Josh Jones. That was a big piece for them. The offensive line is something that they needed to improve. It's something that definitely with Sam Darnold as your starting quarterback, you have to improve. And if you're going to improve that, there's only more time to throw for your quarterback. That helps the downfield receiver in Torrey Horton. So Horton is a nice play. Now, before we get into this next guy, who might be my overall favorite like wide receiver team fit in the entire draft, just a quick reminder, if you want to get a real edge this fantasy season, that I'm giving away this right here, my free 5-day fantasy email course. The whole idea is that it's packed with these strategies to avoid these 5 mistakes that I see most often. Almost every single fantasy player will make at least one, if not all of these mistakes each off season. And it's the reason why that you're most likely missing your playoffs, finishing in 5th or 6th, or can't get over the hump and finishing in 2nd or 3rd place. So if you want to make sure that you avoid those mistakes, it's completely free. There's a QR code on the screen, and it'll also be linked in the description, or you can just go to startwinningfantasyfootball.com right now to get the free 5-day course. I don't know how long I'll keep it free. All right, let's get back into it. That wide receiver I was teasing is going to be Jack Bech, and I think his fit with the Raiders, especially since they spent a 2nd round pick on him, it's really interesting. At first, like, it's kind of weird to me. I'm like, the Raiders, Geno Smith there, now a new coach with Pete Carroll, Jacoby Myers is like your number 1 receiver, Jack Bech comes in. How is this offense all going to piece together? Brock Bowers, right? You could take it a step further and even say Ashton Jeanty, your top 10 overall running back. Like, a lot of moving pieces on this offense, and you throw another one in the 2nd round with Jack Bech. Well, credit to Jack Bech for being a 2nd round pick, because through his first 4 years of college, you could see the 2nd year right here was 2021. The first one not listed because he didn't do anything. 2022 and 2023, he's never breaking 500 yards. And in his last 2 years before his final season, just 200 receiving yards, 137. Like, none of this is looking good. He started at LSU, where he actually was solid early on as a younger player, even though he had tougher competition, but then he did nothing from there until his final year at TCU, where he ends up going out there and finally breaking out. 62 catches, over 1,000 receiving yards. He's having solid overall production, 16.7 yards per reception, 9 touchdowns. He puts himself on the radar enough and shows really good film, by the way. We talked about that in the pre-draft process, breaking down receivers. Good enough film to be a 2nd round pick in the NFL. And oh yeah, by the way, he did it with just 1 drop last year across his 93 targets. Reliable. And let's look at his game logs on ESPN right here. At the bottom is his first game of the year against Stanford. And if we scroll over to the stats, he started the season off really strong. These are his receptions right here, his yardage. So he starts 4 out of his first 5 games, 139 yards, 200 yards, 166, and 131. He ends the season pretty strong as well, right? You have 77, 98-yard games. The overall offense at TCU started to fall off towards the end of the season, but in general, a hot start. That's what got him on NFL radars, and they ended up watching his overall film and fell in love. Or at least the Raiders did, and you can see right here, there's a big reason for that. Another reception perception stat posted by Ron Stewart here, so this is courtesy of Reception Perception. Before the catch, 85th percentile against man, great. 60th against zone, fine. 91st percentile against press coverage. After the catch point as well, or at the catch point, contested catches was 93rd percentile. All this stuff is awesome. It kind of fits the mold of a 2nd round wide receiver, even though a lot of people didn't think Jack Bech would go this high. And in college, he was used all over the field, and I think that gives the Raiders a lot of flexibility with him this year. He played 55% out of the slot, 35% out wide, and 10% at the tight end position, believe it or not. And having that versatility is really interesting because he played 55% of the time out of the slot last year at a 6'1", 214 pounds. So he was kind of this plus size slot receiver / tight end hybrid for them, although he wasn't blocking as much as he was going out and actually running routes. He was used all over the field, and I think that's going to be really interesting because the Raiders already have a guy in Jakobi Meyers who can play inside out. They have Brock Bowers who could basically be used anywhere in the backfield, on the line, in the slot, out wide, and now they have Jack Bech as well. It gives them a lot of versatility on offense. And speaking of that offense, I mean, they had to go out and get a wide receiver one way or another, right? Like they lose Devontae Adams midseason last year. Nobody was able to replace him. Jakobi Meyers did his best and he was great, but Trey Tucker as a number 2 last year, he was speedy. He had like 1 or 2 big plays, wasn't it? You scroll down a little bit more, like there wasn't much here. I think they had like a DJ Turner on the team. Christian Wilkerson's like a special teams guy. They also drafted Deontay Thornton, who I think is interesting in terms of size and speed. I don't think that he's just like a nobody. He could be a factor as well. But if we look at the actual competition here, at the wide receiver position specifically, Jack Bech is the number 2 receiver in camp right on this team. But we have to keep in mind, Brock Bowers is there. He's a number 1. Jakobi Meyers, Ashton Jeanty is going to see a lot of the overall offensive touches. So there is obviously competition. But the Seahawks did a lot this offseason, not only in the draft with Jeanty and Jack Bech and Deontay Thornton, but you go over here and the biggest thing that they did was go out and get a legitimate quarterback in Geno Smith. Yeah, I say Geno Smith when he's actually protected well and not forced to make throws and scrambled and off his rhythm. He's probably a borderline top 12 quarterback in the NFL week in and week out, especially when it comes to arm talent. And last year, this was quietly a top 10 offensive line in terms of pass protection. I think that helps Jack Bech. I think he's getting on the field right away. This is going to be a guy who rises during like the pre-draft process in summer, and a lot of people start to gain steam on him. Get him right now and put him on your radar. Speaking of second round wide receivers, a player who was taken, I believe, 3 picks before Jack Bech in the draft was Trey Harris. He ends up landing on the Chargers, and I mean, this was just like the perfect combination of a wide receiver who was great in college last year and a team that needed this exact type of player in the Chargers. If we look at Trey Harris, I mean, he might have led the entire country in receiving yards last year if he didn't get injured. He only played 9 games. He goes over 1,000 yards. He averages over 17 yards per catch, 60 receptions, 3 straight years in college, putting up over 900 yards in the SEC. Great. Production's all there. Solid player. But the problem was he ended up getting injured. But if you just look at the games that he played, he was averaging 129 yards per game, number 1 in college football, and over 5 yards per route run, also number 1. And as my friend Austin points out here, Austin's Twitter is Austin Abbott FF. You can check him out. As he points out here on Twitter, he said that Trey Harris's 13-game pace was 110 receptions, over 1,800 yards, and 11 touchdowns. I mean, that's how good this guy was. He was averaging over 120 receiving yards per game in the SEC. He has solid size. He's 6'2", 205 pounds, kind of that Jamar Chase build in terms of wide receivers, and he showed elite bursts at the NFL Combine. And the ways that he wins, well, he just dominates downfield. Honestly, really not so much with speed as much as technique and ability to win after the catch. So the Chargers took him with the 55th overall pick in the 2nd round, and when you look at their team, they have their wide receiver in Ladd McConkey from last year, certified stud. We know that. They bring back Mike Williams, who really hasn't been much. He's dealt with injuries. He's older now, and I'm not expecting much out of him. Quentin Johnson, he saw improvement last year, but still very hit or miss overall. I think Trey Harris is just a Quentin Johnson replacement in this offense. It might not happen right away in week 1, might not happen in week 2, although I think it could, but I think at some point in that first half of the year, Harris is going to surpass Quentin Johnson in overall snap counts. And if he doesn't, it probably just means that Quentin Johnson got good enough this past offseason and worked his tail off, which is good for the Chargers. Maybe not as much for us for fantasy, but I think that's unlikely. The Chargers have been active this offseason. They go out, they get Najee Harris, they draft Amarion Hampton in the 1st round. They tell us what they want to do this year, which is what we kind of always knew they wanted to do, right? They go and get Mekhi Becton, a massive guard. They get Tyler Conklin, who can also block along the offensive line. This is a team that I think is going to go out there and want to run the ball a little bit more than they usually do. A lot more 2 wide receiver sets. Ladd McConkey's going to be on the field, and I think Trey Harris will be that other receiver. We know that this team wants to run the ball under Jim Harbaugh. They were kind of forced to throw more than usual last year because their defense was so injured and overall did not perform up to expectations. But even if they run the heck out of the ball, Herbert's still going to throw the ball 500 plus times a game, right? That's 29 pass attempts per game, maybe even 550 times a game. So this is going to be a situation where like you're still going to see strong target shares. If Trey Harris comes in here and only earns a 15%, heck, if he balls out and earns a 20% target share, he's going to be going way too late in fantasy drafts. And just one more thing I want to point out here. Hopefully I don't lose you because this is a chart and data and nerd stuff, but Ian Hart has posted this on Twitter right here. Yards per route run, which is like the best efficiency metric out there. This is the yards per route run for wide receivers in the draft versus man and zone coverage. These are all the other wide receivers that were drafted. This is Trey Harris. Up and to the right is the best you possibly could be, and he's so far up and to the right, it's not even close. This is from 2024's data. Trey Harris Harris last year was like literally one of the best, if not the best wide receiver efficiency wise in all of college football. And he just doesn't get that credit. And another guy who doesn't get a lot of credit actually went in the 3rd round later than a lot of other wide receivers and people expected him to, was Jalen Noel out of Iowa State. He lands on the Houston Texans. I think this is a really interesting pick. And I think overall this probably means that Tank Dell, who's not going to be playing this year, and that injury is like devastating, we've never seen it, it might end up hurting his entire career in the NFL, sadly. And insert Jalen Noel, who kind of profiles out as his direct replacement for the future. A guy who at Iowa State last year led the team with over 1,100, almost 1,200 yards, a 26% target share, 81 catches. He was fantastic, even though he was playing right next to his other teammate at Iowa State, who was also drafted to the Texans, and Jaden Higgins, also putting up over 1,100 yards. He was still able to produce these high numbers. He also lined up in the slot primarily. He was used on the return game as well, which usually shows your athleticism. And as Matt Harmon points out right here, 74 percentile against man coverage. That's great. 82 percentile against zone. Amazing. 82 percentile against zone is fantastic. It shows you know how to work out of the slot. You're a very smart route runner. You know how to find the spots, the soft spots in the zone. So that's awesome. And he goes to the NFL Combine and he's just like a workout bully. He runs a 4.39, insane. His burst score is one of the best we've ever seen. 99th percentile, number 1 amongst all wide receivers at the Combine this year. When you talk about just everything from a speed, a burst, even a power, a catch radius, he checked all those boxes, had the college production, had the film, and lands in a spot where like he could see significant snaps year 1. There's only one thing standing in his way from probably like skyrocketing up the rankings, right? And it's this right here. The additions this offseason from the Texans. Christian Kirk was their big addition. They only signed him to a 1-year deal with Stefon Diggs now gone. Obviously, Tank Dell's dealing with the injury, so you know for a fact that this is going to be a Nico Collins on the out. Let me just show you instead. This is an easier visualization. You know for a fact it's going to be Nico Collins on the outside. The fact that they just signed Christian Kirk and drafted 2 wide receivers means I don't think John Mechie is going to be anything despite like 1 or 2 big games last year. And then after that, you're taking Jaden Higgins in the 2nd round. He's probably going to be an outside receiver. Christian Kirk most likely starts the year in the slot. And then you're going to be having Jalen Noel as a number 4 receiver on this team on paper right now. Looks like the guy who will compete directly with Christian Kirk for a starting spot. And it's not like Kirk was paid $20+ million like the Jaguars signed him to a couple of years ago. He was signed to a 1-year modest deal. He's not like guaranteed to be a starter on the Texans. And for the most part, like Christian Kirk, I would kind of say like Jalen Noel is like the upgraded version. Like he's kind of like this, I would say a little bit more athletic, although they both have that speed. They could both play inside out, but he's definitely the younger, more explosive for sure. And just like the younger version of Christian Kirk coming out of college, except a little bit more upgrade. And when you look at the way that he kind of profiles out on this team as a slot wide receiver, like the Texans O-line remains pretty shaky this offseason. It got even more shaky trading away some key players like a Laramie Tunsil. So I think that if he does get on the field, you could see a lot of quick volume going his way from CJ Stroud. Now, some of the wide receivers we talked about in this video, it might take time for them to get on the field, but if they do, they could really stand out. I specifically went through and picked the players who are landing in good situations, a clear path to playing time, and they actually have the talent to take it to the next level and potentially be a breakout type player for you. Remember Puka Nacua, a 5th round pick years ago? Yeah, like that's kind of the Jack Mesh type mold. But probably a better example would be a 5th round pick in Torrey Horton, another similar mold. He can get on the field pretty quickly. Now, if you found this helpful, make sure to hit the subscribe button so you can see all the future videos I put out throughout the summer, and be sure to get your free 5-day email course with the QR code on the screen or just by going to startwinningfantasyfootball.com right now. It's free. You don't want to make the mistakes that your league mates are going to make. Appreciate you all, and I'll see you in the next one.